Okay, good to go.
Okay. Thank you for joining us this evening and welcome you all to the Babylon Village Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for Wednesday, July 15th, 2020. Before going any further, I'd like to ask Member John Farrell to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, John. And also, before we get underway, I just want to say it's with a very heavy heart that we meet this evening without one of our most beloved members of this board, Jack Conroy. Jack passed on last week, but I'm confident he's looking down upon the proceeding and smiling in his inimitable fashion and egging me on to get moving to the first application. But as I would usually say, Jack, please give me a second. Jack was a longtime member of this board and has served as its secretary for many years. We depended upon Jack to decipher complex applications for publication to ensure they were complete and correct. As a lifelong Babylon Village resident, Jack would always provide us with a historical perspective on any property in question, with anecdotes about prior ownerships going back decades and with all sorts of stories about those properties. And that whole process would always bring a smile to Jack's face. Jack always took this position on the board very seriously because of his lifelong love for Babylon Village. No matter how complex an application was before us, he always said he was guided by one simple rule: what's in the best interest of Babylon Village? It's a motto he lived by, and it's what guided his involvement in so many village activities. We're all going to miss Jack, his smile, his insights, his humility, his sense of right and wrong. But I know that Jack is watching over us and will be whispering in our ears to guide our decisions. And rest in peace, my friend. Now I will listen to his request, and we'll move on to the applications this evening. There are 5 applications that appear on the docket, and we will hear them in the order in which they appeared in the public notice, with one exception. The first application heard will be number 5, that of Capital One Bank. Other than that, we will hear them in the order in which they appeared in the public notice. The way we will do this is we will read the application. We will ask the applicant to explain the variance that you're looking for, take any questions from the board, and then we will ask if there's any member also listening who has signed up to comment, to provide any comments that they see fit. If there's anyone here who has not signed up and wants to provide comments to our board, we leave the docket open for 7 days after this meeting to collect any other comments people have. Legally, we have 60 days from the time a docket's closed to make a decision. The more simple applications do not take that amount of time, but the more complex ones can, depending upon the amount of research we have to do based on questions and issues that come up during these hearings, as well as if we ask the applicant for additional information that we're waiting for them to provide. The applicant will be notified of the disposition of an application directly from the clerk's office. Any other member of the public that would like to know the disposition of an application can get that information as well by calling the clerk's office, and that information will be released once it's released to the applicant. Okay. So with that, I will say application number 1. Capital.
Hey, Mr. Chairman. Application number 1, application of Gregory Bryant, Capital One NA,
1307 Walt Whitman Road, Melville, New York, 11747. Owner, City MD, CO Son, Ward Cashagno, 333 Earl Ovington Boulevard, Suite 601, Uniondale, New York, 11553. Wayne Edwards, Esquire, applicant, for a special use permit required for medical offices in Residence O District. Property located at 8 Little East Neck Road, Babylon, New York, in Residence O District, Suffolk County Real Property Tax Map District 0102, Section 12, Block 2, Lot 18. Application made in accordance with Sections 365-17 and 365-35.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have to recuse on this application.
Who is it?
Barry?
I can't talk now. I'm in the middle of a meeting.
Okay.
Okay, applicant for Capital One.
I am adding them in now. We also have a person calling in from a 516 number. I'm going to unmute you if you could identify yourself. The 516-317 number. No? Okay.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello? Can I
I
begin?
see a number of people before us. Who's taking the lead?
I am Dwayne Edwards.
Good evening.
Can I begin?
I think you have, let's see, you have 5 people on your team? There's 5 before us,
Yes.
And
or,
also, I have more coming. Sorry, no. No, that's all we have.
okay. Very good, Mr. Edwards. Go right ahead.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. For the record, my name is Wayne Edwards, Dawn Ward Casignano, 333 Earl Ovington Boulevard, Uniondale, New York. I'm the attorney for the applicant. We're before you today for a special use permit to convert. I think there's some background noise going on, which is located at
Everyone should mute themselves. That's not speaking.
we good?
Yes,
At 8 Little East Neck Road in the village of Babylon. The property is 30,731 square feet. It fronts on 3 different roads. To the north is Perrydale Court. To the east is Little East Neck Road, which the building fronts on. And to the south is Montauk Highway. It has 2 curb cuts, one on Perrydale Court and the other on Montauk Highway. There is no curb cut on Little East Neck Road. On June 24th, we appeared before the Village of Babylon Planning Board for approval. They couldn't give approval at that time and has sent us to the Board of Zoning Appeals for the special use permit. They submitted a letter dated July 1st, 2020, which I'm sure the board has a copy of. The property is improved with a 1.5-story building, which is 4,591 square feet. As the board is aware, this was originally constructed around 2006 as a North Fork bank. North Fork Bank eventually sold out to Capital One, and Capital One operated the bank, but closed this location approximately 2 years ago. North Fork Bank, as part of the approval process, received not only planning board approval, but as well as a special use permit from the Board of Zoning Appeals and variances for the building. That building also included a drive-through window, which is located on the west side building. It is the applicant's request to convert the existing bank building into a City MD, which is an urgent care center. City MD has a presence in a number of sites within Suffolk County, Long Island, and the metropolitan area. We retain consultants, that being R&M Engineering, for the site work and site plans, as well as concept design to do our architectural work with details, the conversion of the existing building into a City MD site. The first floor of the building is 3,845 square feet. There is a mezzanine of 746 square feet. There will be no drive-through window. The parking lot shows 24 stalls for the medical office use, and the existing mezzanine, 22.9 stalls are required under the zoning code of the village. The drive-through window area will be re-landscaped and pavers will be installed. The proposed hours of operation will be 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on weekends, with approximately 7 to 8 employees per shift, with 1 medical doctor, 3 to 4 clinical support staff, a manager, and 2 front desk administrators. Typically, and they do this from experience, this center will see between 30 and 40 patients per day. The time of each visit is about 32 minutes. The peak hours are between 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. And again, this information is based on the 150 sites that they have. You come to the site without an appointment. There are no appointments made for this type of facility. I draw your attention to concept design plan number A100, which shows the proposed interior layout. It shows 7 exam rooms, an X-ray room, a lab, reception area, waiting room, an office for the manager, a staff lounge, and various bathrooms. The mezzanine will be used for storage of supplies. Plan A200 shows the south elevation of the building. It will be the same as what exists now. The landscaping, which is currently exists, has grown in, and if it has to be filled in, it will be filled in, keeping in mind that we have to keep proper sight lines where curb cuts exist. A photometric plan was submitted, and the existing lighting is remaining the same. There will be some new lighting in the paved area, which was formerly the drive-through window. We will use the same classic pole, which has a classic Victorian head. On Long Island, City MD has 31 locations. They offer a variety of services, which are detailed in the website. If you're interested in looking at it, we have with us today, Dr. Nadel Shamai from City MD. I also have with me Matthew Alward from R&M Engineering, as well as Kenneth Kim from Concept Design to answer any questions regarding the interior. This is an ideal repurposing of the building. Its use services the village and in the area. It's a special use permit in the RO zone. It's a permitted use subject to reasonable restrictions. This use is much less intense than a bank use, which obtained the special use permit. It has less visits per day, thus less traffic and less impact on the existing roadways. We had a study prepared by R&M Engineering. I have Wayne Muller with me, who is a traffic consultant there. I've submitted this morning the letter assessment, which shows that, and if you have any questions for Mr. Muller, he's available as well. As I stated at the planning board hearing, and I stated before, this is a benefit to the village. There is a lack of internists and family medicine practitioners nationwide, and especially in the Long Island. And this fills in a void. Visiting an urgent care, which is available, provides necessary service, and also lessens the impact on emergency rooms of the local hospitals. At this time, do you have any questions for me or my consultants?
Sure we do. Let me go back a second. You said you have 31 locations on Long Island?
Yes.
They include what, 2 in Bayshore, 1 in Lindenhurst, Opay?
I can look them up if you want.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to get a sense. Where else on the South Shore are they?
Okay, we have somebody from, I'll look it up just for, the advantage of sitting by your computer, you can look it up. City MD.
Can you guys hear me? I don't know if I'm on
Yes.
mute or not.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, we have 31.
Give your appearance. Give your appearance. To the board.
Sorry. Yeah, this is Dr. Nadal Shami.
Okay, let's the expert.
I'm a board certified physician, principal partner, and chief growth officer at City MD.
Mm-hmm.
We have we pretty much dot the South Shore. If you go from Merrick, Lynbrook, all the way up to Syosset, we have about 14 centers in Suffolk, 15 or so. I'm losing count in Suffolk, and the remainder in Nassau.
Okay.
About every mile and a half to 2 miles on the South Shore in Nassau County.
Right. I guess one of the issues that jumped out at me was the 30 to 40 patients a day. It seems like an awfully small number. Well, let me go back a step. Mr. Edwards, you mentioned it during your introductory comments. Do you understand what the Residence O area is about?
What? Yes.
The characteristics of Residence O area.
Yes.
It's basically areas abutting residential property. So what we look for typically are operations that are low volume. Because we do not allow parking on the streets. We do not allow a lot of activity on the site because of the nature of the zone and the surrounding areas. Just so we're all on the same page.
Well, I think we are on the same page. If you look at, I'm looking at 36417B. Basically, it has, you permitted a bank. We're less intense than a bank. And doctors, lawyers, architects, professional officers.
All of those approvals were predicated on lower volume operation.
Yeah.
The bank was a very low operation, very low volume operation.
And I think we are also.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
We are definitely on the same page.
The 30 to 40 is representative of an average of all of your locations.
It's representative of an average of our suburban locations. Our Manhattan locations do more than that. So we have 3 types of locations, what we consider our urban sites, which are primarily really our urban 1 site is Manhattan, our borough sites, with the exception of downtown Brooklyn that acts like a New York, like a Manhattan, but outside of that, there's a borough volume. And then when you leave the borough volume, we have our suburban volume.
Right.
Again, our suburban volume includes most of Nassau and all of Suffolk, and about 8 counties in New Jersey as well fall into that category. And those sites average in the 40 patient a day count. That's correct.
Okay, so what about the Long Island sites? And the reason I ask is because I've used your facility. I've used your facility in Deer Park. Very clean facility, efficient. But I have to tell you, and it was before this COVID event. There were a lot more than 3 people there waiting while I was there. The place was full. That's good news to you. But a concern when I see a number like this.
Yeah, happy to. So we certainly have sites that are busier than that. We're looking at 31 sites average. I'll give you an example. Our Huntington site saw 22 patients a day. We're retrofitting it currently. We have other sites in Queens that see 31 patients a day, and they're in Queens. You have other sites that can see 60 patients a day. Our estimate, I think one of our busiest sites in Syosset sees, in the 70 account, but our average is 40. The other variable is that we do see peaks, and so typically the morning time. You might see 7 or 8 patients come in over the morning hours, and then it really trails off in the afternoon. 1, 2, 3 o'clock. It's like crickets.
Okay, and that's the reason for the 7 exam rooms.
Yeah, we wouldn't need it if everyone came in exactly at 2 to 3 patients an hour. It wouldn't be an issue, but because we're urgent care and we meet the demand when and where it is. We have to be ready for these surges, which are typically in the morning.
Okay. And then talk to me a little bit about the staffing. It's 7 to 8 per shift. How long is a shift?
12 hours.
So it's one day? Everybody does it in one day?
That's right.
Same 7 or 8 people, they're the same day. There's no change in shift.
Sometimes there can be a change in shift, depending on what the regional management wants to do. The doctors generally know. The doctors really want their 12-hour shift. They prefer that because they have to work less days a week. Some of the other positions, managers work the whole shift. Some of the other positions might do a 6-hour on like a Wednesday's a common day where we have half shifts. But for the most part, a vast majority of the shifts are the entire shift.
Okay. So again, we have worst case conditions. So a Wednesday, for instance, when you have a half a shift, so you have a shift change at noon, you now have 15 cars or so with employees, and that would leave you.
No, so we would never. We really rarely have. I don't think we've ever done it where all 8 members have a half shift. Usually, it would be something like a customer representative who has a half shift that day. Might be 1 or 2 staff positions that could have a half shift, but that is really not our common practice. It's allowable in our company, and we have done it in certain cases. But a lot of our team, we have 3,000 employees. One of the benefits of working with us is, and it's very much like a nursing schedule, is if they work 3 12s, they're done for the week, right? They get their 36 hours in, they get their full time and their benefits. And so a lot of times, a lot of our the vast majority of the team members really enjoy that structure. It's the exception to the rule if someone has an event but it's really not part of our standard practice to split shifts.
Okay. And I have one other question that I want to ask about your traffic study. And the planning letter from the planning board, and just for the record, they can't approve it. The letter they sent you did not approve this application. It merely sent it to us. They do an assessment of their issues, but they can't grant approval for anything that requires what we're looking for. But they mentioned here in the last paragraph something about a documentation regarding.
I didn't hear what.
I'm sorry. They say in the last paragraph of the planning letter that you mentioned something about a receipt of documentation regarding the sewer permit for the site. Whoop, you're on mute.
We're in the process of making that application. Somebody from R&M Engineering prepared the application. It's being signed by the tenant as well as the property owner, and it's being submitted to the Department of Health. And we will not receive a building permit or a CO, if we do get approved, until those items are supplied.
Okay. And the last thing for me, at least for now, is if R&M or whoever did your traffic study could explain to us how, what the numbers are actually based on. Because again, I'm looking at this from the perspective of the worst case condition, right? And not a guideline we have our own guidelines that really never foresaw the kind of medical emergency practices that exist today. Let's face it. That was never foresawn 20, 30 years ago plus. So if somebody there could address that, that'd be great.
I have Wayne Muller, who is ready to appear.
Great, thank you.
If you can unmute him, please.
He's good.
Okay.
Good evening, Wayne Muller with the firm of Robinson and Muller Engineering. Our office is at 50 Elm Street, Huntington, New York. As the board is aware, we prepared a traffic assessment dated July 10, 2020, which I believe was emailed to the board in advance of the hearing. And we performed an assessment of the parking and traffic generated by the proposed use. As indicated in my letter, we used nationwide statistics to compute the level of traffic that could be generated by both the previous bank use of the property and also of the proposed medical office building. Excuse me. Those statistics are presented in the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual, and that is a compilation of statistics for a tremendous quantity of land uses, and two of them being a drive-in bank, a bank with a drive-through window, and also the medical office building. And that information is presented in table 2 of my report. And as you can see from that information, that a bank with a drive-in window would generate a significantly larger quantity of traffic than what would be generated by the proposed City MD facility. And those statistics are based on a tremendous database of facilities similar to both the bank and the medical office building. In addition, as it relates to the parking, as indicated in my letter and indicated on the plans prepared by my firm, a total of 22.9 parking spaces are required for the project at a rate of 1 parking space per 200 gross square feet. We provide 24 spaces, so we're actually providing 1 space greater than what the village code would require. In advance of the hearing this afternoon, I had sent one of my staff over to not City MD in Huntington, because I believe that facility is being renovated right now. Correct, Doctor? It's correct. But
Yes, he mentioned that. He's on mute, but yeah.
Actually, that facility is located right in the heart of Huntington Village. But I sent one of my staff engineers over to look at an urgent care facility that I was familiar with, which is located on, I guess it would be called East Main Street, Route 25A in Huntington. It's actually the Northwell Health, Go Health Urgent Care Facility. And what we found was that the rate of vehicles parked at 11 a.m. in the morning, between 11 and I guess it was 12, which is the peak time for this type of facility, as indicated by the doctor, based on our experience, was 3 vehicles parked per 1,000 square feet. So if we were to relate that to the proposed facility, we would be looking at a total of 15 vehicles parked during the peak time at 11 o'clock. And that kind of jives very well with the information that was supplied by Mr. Edwards and also Dr. Shami, in so much as they're looking at an average of, say, 30 to 40 patients per day within a 12-hour shift, which if the peak time was probably more like 25% of that would translate into 10 vehicles parked plus staff, which would be 18. We provide 24 spots. There still would be available parking spaces in the lot to accommodate the demand. At the times that I visited the urgent care facility, there were a handful of people in there. But again, this is more tantamount to, if you wanted to look at the parking activity, would be tantamount more to like a low volume retail use, because the activity is sporadic. We can't really predict when people are going to be sick. But again, the facility that we looked at this morning is during the pandemic, where people could theoretically go there at in greater frequency than they might have at other time periods.
Can you tell me what the proximity was of that facility to other care facilities similar to this? Because there were several out there. You mentioned Northwell, you mentioned others. And Mr. Edwards, in his opening comments, indicated that this is a good spot because there aren't many in this area.
Well, in Huntington, I believe.
Would that help to dictate what kind of volume you would expect?
Well, again, if you look at, I just Googled the map with City MD, and I guess the board could also do that too. And you can see, as the doctor correctly presented, the City MDs are located, within a 1 to 2 mile radius of each other. So they're actually become more like neighborhood facilities.
Right.
In Huntington, there was the Northwell Health facility located. That's on the eastern edge of the village. Then as we travel further west, to the best of my knowledge, there's City MD, which is under renovation. And then I believe there's Pro Health, which is across the street from that. So you've got these competing facilities, and I guess that they're all spaced out pretty evenly.
Yeah, my point is that if there are several in the same area, I would expect a lower volume. Where if they're not, I would anticipate maybe a higher volume, that's all.
I totally agree with that.
But again, this was not, for instance, taking an average of, say, the City MD offices within 5 or 10 miles of this particular one,
I think the doctor.
particular location. You know, so you'd have the Bay Shore, you'd have Deer Park, you'd have, Copeg. This is not an indication of that area.
Is the question is what are those stores averages? Is that the question?
Yeah, I'm wondering what the results would be if we looked at something that was, on the South Shore in relative proximity. Now, I know there's a lot of, there's a lot of variables,
Yeah, I think the Copeg location, and I can get the exact number. I don't have the exacts for all of them, but I think Copeg is a slightly lower volume site. I think it's in the mid 30s. Our Bayshore location, I believe, hovers in the 40s. This is pre-COVID.
Right.
Averages.
Right.
Hovers in the 45 to 50 range. Just off the top of my mind.
Okay. And let me ask you this: what would be the plan, given the area around it? There's no parking on Montauk Highway. There's no parking on 109. The north side of this property is a residential area. What happens if you hit that peak? Where would people?
I don't know if that's addressed to me. What ends up happening is people don't come, generally speaking, because what we've noticed which is why our throughput time is 32 minutes. On average, we've treated a lot of New Yorkers over the years, and we generally get people in and out for their episode in roughly 32 to 48 minutes or so. But the average is in the high 30s. But I think to your point, you're correct. If people can't conveniently access the site when they want to, they generally will find another resource. It's not like a doctor's office where they have an appointment and they're going to park somewhere and wait. If it's not convenient for the patient, they tend to go somewhere else.
Okay. And one lastly, I feel like Columbo. Lastly, the parking spaces that you have on the site, they're the same size parking spaces that were there with the bank, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you added what, one in the proximity of the drive-through that you use or something?
We added one, but we also removed one for the dumpster enclosure.
Right. Okay. Okay, that's all I have right now. Any other member of my board have a question?
I have one.
Sure, Jeff.
Okay, it's Jeff Weber. In the operation of your facility here in our village, do you have any plans to provide ambulance service there? A contract
No.
with somebody like a Hunter and
No,
or somebody?
we don't. We're not. We're like any other doctor's office. We don't contract with ambulance services. In the rare event, most of our services are non-life-threatening. We don't treat life-threatening conditions. In the rare event that someone shows up that requires immediate life-saving intervention, we would call 911 and activate the 911 system. In general, that happens less than 1% of all visits. And so it's not a common event. Most of our customers, 99% are respiratory type symptoms, trips, falls, trauma, broken ankles, sprained ankles, cough, congestion, et cetera. But life-threatening heart attacks, strokes is not something we treat.
Right. Well, that I understand. I've been in that field as a volunteer and a former chief of the fire department for 45 years. And certainly if somebody comes in and they're exhibiting signs of an MI, certainly without a doubt, you'd want to do that. But it's been our experience with other doctors' offices, and then is that they're basically rather low-level, non-emergency calls. They're using the volunteers and some of our paid staff to transport these patients. And in one case, I understand, I want to say North Babylon, they were talking about they've answered 300 calls. That's the data I had. I just got that from our chief.
At a city MD?
Excuse me?
Was that 300 calls at a city MD?
That part I'm not clear on yet,
Okay.
but I mean, it's something that, you know, we have to look at here because many of these other districts that you may have offices in, they have more than one ambulance. Here in Babylon, we only have one. And, you know, really, I mean, that's for our residents. I don't you know, I'm not sure how many of your customers per se would be transients or village residents or not. I mean, that's not for us to decide, but what I am saying is that if you turned around and you put like 200 to 300 calls into our mix, that would be an increase of 25 to 30%. And
I can tell you from our experience,
to fill the void of the volunteers. So
of
it's
course,
a fair question.
It absolutely is. I was a volunteer EMT for 7 years before I went to med school, so I completely understand in the town of Paramus. I also ended up volunteering with the fire department in heavy rescue for the 2 years. So I completely understand the volunteer system and environment. But to go back to City MD, we do not use transportation services of any kind. The only time we will activate 911 is for exactly like you said, sir, a heart attack or a stroke. But we don't do transport services. We don't have ambulatory care relationships with anyone to transport them to. The other only point I'd love to add is, you know, we are, and we really do view ourselves as part of your community, hopefully. And our goal is to serve the members of the community. Generally speaking, our sites in Long Island, 80% of the visits are from the immediate surrounding community. And so to that effect, you know, the folks who have an issue late at night or early in the morning or who tripped and fell and maybe hurt their wrist, you know, they don't have to go to the hospital. They don't have to possibly, you know, call an ambulance to go to the hospital. We're available for the community on a moment's notice. And we think that's you know, we're proud to offer that service in all the communities we serve. But to get back to your original question, we absolutely do not contract with any transportation services at all.
Okay. Anything else, Joe?
No, that's it. You know, you knew what my concern was with that. I just don't want to see our volunteers and our other staff overburdened. You know, when I hear numbers like 300 calls a year, I mean, that's a serious concern that I would have. And it's something I would want to look at where, you know, maybe that would have to be something that in order to run your operation in our village, you would need to do is have a contract with like a hunter or something. You know, and I would use the example, I've seen this myself. Somebody's got a foot infection. Oh, you got to go to the ER. Well, okay, you could drive the person there. I mean, you've done rescue, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
We have, like I say, we have limitations as to our resources.
Yeah.
So that's my concern.
Okay, thank you
for your answers.
Frank, do you have any questions? You're on mute.
Just one question there. Regarding the trip volume, I know that, you know, there's a lot more with the bank than it would be with the medical office. But do you know what the time is? What, as a comparison, we're comparing number of trips. Can we compare the number of time for each of these trips as opposed to, you know, going to the bank as coming to the medical facility?
As I alluded to, the average visit time ranges between 32 to 48 minutes for the visit. I'm not sure if that answered your question.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make a comparison. Say you did make a comparison between the number of trips, and I was just wondering, compare the time. So yours is 32 to 48. Has the R&M done anything to say approximately what the time was with the facility?
Okay, I'm having a hard time hearing, but Table 2 presents the data that we prepared to compare the traffic generated by the bank and the medical office. And as per common traffic engineering practice, we looked at 4 different timeframes. The first one is the morning rush hour timeframe. Then we did the midday timeframe, which would be between 11 and 2 o'clock in the afternoon, again on the way home, and then Saturday midday. So those are the timeframes that we use for comparison in accordance with standard traffic engineering practices. And you can see by the review of the table that during all time periods, the traffic generated by the medical facility is much that could be generated by the bank if it was fully operational. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Bruce, I
Anything else,
just have a
Frank?
few, I just have a couple of questions, if that's okay.
Sure, go right ahead, John.
Sure. This is probably directed more towards Mr. Muller and Dr. Shami. So you had mentioned through time, Dr. Shami, you had mentioned through time somewhere 32 to 48 minutes or so. And then Mr. Muller, you had referenced sort of traffic patterns and flow. I think, and this may be piggybacking on what Mr. Siebert was referencing, I'm very interested to see how your through time and parking capacity compares to the existing capacity and the through time with the bank. I would imagine, having attended banks and been to banks many times, I would imagine that the through time at a bank is significantly lower than what would be at a city MD. So I can't say for sure that it would be 3 times lower, but I feel like most of my bank visits are in the 10-minute range. And having been, as Mr. Humanick said, I've been to City MD myself. I think 32 minutes feels a little optimistic as a patient. So I'm really concerned about that parking issue and your through times. And generally, I'm relatively interested, let's say maybe suspect of information studies that are done internally that aren't publicly available. I would love to see some information about your through times, your parking, your daily capacity. And I'm specifically interested, and I think Mr. Humanick was getting to this, I'm specifically interested in sort of equivalent sites, equivalent city MDs, specifically in sort of South Shore, Suffolk County, or at least Suffolk County. I have a great concern that some of the city MDs that you reference maybe have different parking scenarios or are located in different locations. For example, on a service road over major highway, versus in a neighborhood where there are houses immediately and neighbors immediately adjacent to. So I'd really love to see some of that data that is somehow disaggregated for similar settings. Whether that be socioeconomic, demographic, whatever it is. I'd love to see something suburban based and Long Island based for those averages. I'm not sure if that's how you got to the 32 to 48 visits per day. So I'd love to see some additional information there. Additionally, and I know Dr. Shami, you referenced that these studies and that this research was all pre-COVID. And fully recognizing the difficulties with COVID and that is a really unique scenario and that we can't necessarily plan for COVIDs every year, but recognizing that it's real and it's right now, what would City MD's approach be towards a pandemic like this where testing is at a premium? For example, there's a Pro Health in West Islip that is on a service road of a major highway, on Sunrise Highway, where at the height of this and continued, the parking was a significant issue in that community, where parking was going not just in their parking lot and maybe 1 or 2 cars outside for waiting. It was going down blocks into adjacent stores, parking lots, and things like that. So I'd be really interested to know what City MD's perspective or thoughts on are testing and things like that when you're managing a pandemic. I would imagine our neighbors are interested in that as well. So I have some concerns about seeing some through time and parking data. I have some concerns about the overflow in a time when it may not be a COVID pandemic, but it may be flu season. It may be something, similar to that, where it's easy to say, I feel like it's easy to say that once the parking lot is full, those people will drive to the next city MD or to the next doctor's office. But I don't really think that's the case. I think people will end up on streets, outside, waiting for their turn to come in. And I'm not sure if you have so that's two questions. And my third would be, I'm not sure if City MD has a practice of requesting that people wait in their cars to be called in, because that would be a concern of mine if I were a neighbor, that there were people waiting outside of my house for a text message, let's say, to be called in after a half hour, 45 minutes. So those are some of the concerns that I have. And to piggyback with that, I would be very interested before kind of weighing in on something like this to really get some post-COVID or at least during COVID numbers on your visits, because I think our neighbors would be concerned with that as well. It's one thing to look at a city or a Pro Health or something like that in a September where everything is normal, but I think those numbers would be drastically different now, and I worry about the implications that has for the health and safety of your neighbors.
Mr. O'Farrell? Mr. O'Farrell?
Yes, Mr. Edwards.
Can I just address something? In terms of trying to figure out what the numbers are for COVID and non-COVID and things like that. We'll supply information. But regarding COVID, a long time ago, there was a gas shortage. I think I was just in college at that point in time. And every gas station had lines, went down the block. If we planned or took into account designing every gas station for that particular point in history, then every gas station now would have been 3 or 4 acres. Some of the older board members might remember that. It stays with me in history because you would wait online for 3 hours to get 10 gallons worth of gas. There was no gas around. So, we can try to do some of those things, but this is an interesting point in history for the medical community. But in terms of designing a facility or a parking lot to take into account that, it's almost impossible in terms of doing that. In terms of your experience,
Mr. Edwards.
I'm sorry, Mr. Edwards. Let me just respond to that quickly. So, I started my. Yep, Mr. Edwards. Let me finish. So, I started by saying I fully recognize that COVID is a pandemic and relatively unique in probably our lifetimes. I get that, and as was the gas shortage. So I don't think that it's appropriate for the village.
Yeah, but let me add to that. With all due respect, and I did live through both gasoline shortages. But in this case, Mr. Edwards, you have to agree. It's not as though it's not as though the base case here gives you 50% more parking to begin with. You're just meeting the requirements.
And we could add a couple more spots.
The business is being operated.
But I think, Mr. Chairman, and I'm not being argumentative, is that one, we're not here for parking variance. We meet the requirements. We're giving you empirical information regarding that from other locations, that we don't overrun the amount of parking we have, and we could add a couple more spots if that's what the board want. But the point is that the point is, and another thing, this location was built as a bank. Now, Mr. O'Farrell said, well, when he goes to a bank, it's 10 minutes. Well, there are other banks where they have a lot more business operation. This is a pretty big bank in terms of that. And I'm sure North Fork and Capital One planned for something like that. But the banking business has changed substantially. And less people do their banking in a bank than compared to 10 years ago, 14 years ago when this was built. You used to go to banks to open accounts, investments, maybe even insurance and other things in terms of how you dealt with life. They sold a lot of products other than just keeping your money in a checking account and other accounts.
Mr. Edwards,
yes.
I'm telling you that this is called I hear the theory here and I understand the subject matter. The reality is we have not had issues with that bank operating as a bank. We did not. Okay, I don't care what the studies show. I can tell you from reality, and that's where I come from. That's the reality of the situation. The other one is, this was not, and I go back to the planning board letter. They cannot approve this for you. They said, yeah, it met their guidelines. We're asking different questions, okay? Because as I said at the beginning of our piece here, that the concern is that the guidelines that are in place, the question and before us is, do they properly reflect this type of operation? Because the guidelines that are being used are for generic medical, which has been around for a long time. And that's the question that we have to consider. That's why we're asking the questions we do.
I understand that, but in terms of it, I think we've shown that this is a less intense use to the bank. In fact,
you
to be
haven't
honest
shown,
with
you've only shown it theoretically, Mr.
not
Redmond.
theoretically, we've shown it actually. I've got, just
We're
like,
asking for that information now.
well, we provided a traffic assessment. We
Based on
we
theory.
We have a licensed physician who works for the company as chief medical officer, who's testifying about his experience about other suburban locations, and it's a special use permit. It's a permitted use in that zone, subject to
With
reasonable
our
restriction.
permission.
Well,
With
no, with
our
your
permission.
permission. With your
I'm not going to
permission.
argue with you, Mr.
I'm
Edwards.
not
I don't think
arguing.
that'll get us anyplace.
I know it's not, and I'm not arguing with you, but I'm just trying to tell you that in terms of a use of a existing building that's been vacant for 2 years, this is a great compliment for
Mr.
reutilizing
Edwards,
that building.
Mr. Edwards,
And
that's
I
great.
really,
Have you ever seen the building?
yes.
Do you live in Babylon?
Oh, is that a new requirement? No, I don't.
No, what I'm saying is we pass that building every day, Mr. Edwards. We know you're giving me theory. I'm telling you practice. And that's
And I think we've given you
the
practice.
concern here is because it's a Residence O area. That's the concern, Mr. Edwards.
Oh, I understand what the concern is. I have to say something. I guess I'm a little shocked that all of you live on Long Island. Many of you have gone to urgent care or you passed by urgent care. I have never passed an urgent care place where I looked at it and said, boy, this place is just overloaded. It's doing, it's traffic is spilling out in the street.
Mr. Edwards, I tell you what, we're going back over information. We're going back over the same information.
We'll provide whatever information.
We're not going to agree on this. Let me just finish.
Okay.
We're going to agree on this. Mr. O'Farrell asked for certain information. Can that information be provided to us?
Doctor, I guess that's out of your bailiwick. That's in your bailiwick.
Can I, can you, I think the information was what our throughput time was, or as I mentioned, our exact 2000.
I'm sorry if I can just interrupt, Dr. Shami. I'm sorry, just so that we're not, I just want to, I can clarify. I know that my questions were sort of in sequence there. So I think what would be helpful for myself and for the board and really for the village is to really get some concrete numbers and information about through time, but not your average through time across, let's say, the tri-state area, but really through time, for example, by site, so that we could ourselves compare some similar sites to what we might see. But also, just let me finish. Dr. Shami, I'll be really clear with my question. So I think the through time is important for similar sites, because I think the board and the village would contend that maybe your average doesn't include similar sites or include similar sites, but also dissimilar sites. So we're mostly concerned with similar sites. So if we could get some information on that through time. Also, I think, yep, just hold on. I'll list them and you can take notes if you want, and then we can go through it. But I think the through time is important because I think the through time directly relates to the capacity of parking. Because I believe, and I think our neighbors believe that the through time may be significantly different than the through time of a bank. And so the parking needs may be different. I think my more important, so that's one issue. And to go to Mr. Edwards' concerns, I fully understand, and I stated in the beginning that pre-COVID, that COVID is a pandemic, and that is perhaps unique to our lifetimes, but not dissimilar from the gas shortage that you cited. So I'm not interested in planning for pandemics, but I am interested in the policy or the practice that CityMD might employ. For example, for something like pandemic testing or flu season testing. So if a parking lot is full, I would be concerned that.
We don't. I can just answer that. We don't.
Yep,
We don't.
Dr.
do
Shambi,
that.
just let me finish with my questions, then you can address them. So I would be concerned that parking overflows, and if CityMD employs a practice where they, for example, text message people as they're waiting in their cars down the block that now they can come in, I think our neighbors would be concerned with that.
Which we don't do.
that.
Yeah, we don't do that. So our medical officers, they don't like that practice. They think it's too introduces a bit too much risk. And so we don't do car texting. We don't do appointments. You have to physically walk in to a CityMD to be seen. That's our policy, and we don't do the car texting thing because we're not appointment based, and so you have to walk in. The throughput time, just to expound on that a bit for you, so it might be helpful. In 2019, our throughput time, I believe, was exactly 41 minutes for the entire system. Now, I know you want to know Long Island, which we can absolutely pull for you. I might be able to pull it right now and have a colleague pull just Suffolk County. But when I say 41 minutes throughput time for the whole system, we're talking about an N of almost 1.5 million visits, right? So the highest throughput time in the system is always the densest spots. It makes sense, right? So Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Bronx have higher throughput times than anyone else. So they may be in the 50s, generally speaking, everyone's under 60 minutes. The less dense you get and the lower volume you get, you're going to see throughput times that are well below the 41, 42 minute average. We can get Long Island, but I was giving the 41, 42 minutes. That was 2019's total system time. It's only less than that as you get away from the center of the city. So maybe it'll be 38, maybe it'll be 31, 32, I'm not sure. But it pretty much sets the ceiling of what the throughput time would be for Long Island, which I think would be very safe to say a 40-minute throughput time would be pretty high for a suburban market for us. And I would venture to say that it would probably be closer to the low 30s, but I can absolutely get you that exact number. I'll actually send a text to our team now to pull that data while we're on this call.
And thank you, Dr. Shami. I appreciate that. And I'm sorry for interrupting before. If you can include some information about how that through time is calculated, specifically, is that calculated from the time of entrance or from the time of being seen? That would be helpful as well. I'm sorry, Dr. I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I can answer that now. So our data, the way throughput time is calculated is from the time you enter the lobby and register. Most people register with our kiosks. So the minute you engage with the kiosk, it's time-stamped. And then when you're physically discharged from the facility and leaving, you get discharge paperwork. And sometimes people don't want the paperwork, they want it in an email. But as soon as that discharge is pressed, it timestamps the visit. So it's from entry until leaving. We have all the other times between when you get in a room, when you see a doctor, if you got an x-ray, all the other stuff. But our throughput time is quite literally from the minute you register to the minute you're discharged.
Thank you for that, Doug. That was really helpful. I appreciate that.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Now we're going to open the meeting to people who registered to comment on this particular application. Kevin?
I'm going to move the applicant back to the attendee mode.
Yes, and then
So
when
you
we'll
can stay in the meeting.
come back to you after they make their comments.
Okay, I'm now going to And our first speaker is Carrie Hoyt. Adding her now. Ms. Hoyt is on now.
Okay. Ms. Hoyt?
She is on and unmuted.
Okay. You don't hear her. Ms.
Okay, I will move her back into the waiting room and go to our next speaker and see if she comes back.
Okay.
Our next speaker is Joanne Botcher.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Ms. Betcher.
Hi. Do you want me to spell my name?
No, we have it. If you just
Oh, okay.
like state your name and address, just for the record.
Okay. Joanne Batcher. I own 401 West Main Street in Babylon, and which is very near the facility that you're speaking of this evening. And I am concerned about the parking because I do know I used to run a facility myself, and you know, as the patients wait and other patients come in, you're going to have an awful lot, aside from the fact that you have how many employees are going to be there?
7 to 8.
7 to 8 at any given time, and you're going to have 7 to 8. How many doctors would be on at any given time?
I think they mentioned one doctor.
One?
I think they mentioned one doctor and I think a few PAs. We'll get that answer when they come back.
Okay, well, that I do mean who would be treating patients, so that would include PAs also.
Yeah, they mentioned in there, when they went to the planning board, employees per shift vary between 7 and 8 and include one doctor, 3 to 4 clinical support staff, 2 receptionists, and 1 staff manager.
Mhm. Well, as a bank, as you mentioned earlier, I don't have to repeat it. Of course, the cars aren't parking on the street. You either drive through or they stop just for a short amount of time. But I know when it comes to people going to a doctor's office and MD, I know it's emergency care, but people go there rather than perhaps go to their other doctor, and they're going to wait there as long, especially during flu season, cold season, or any other season, and they're going to be parking on the streets. There's just not going to be enough parking. You have all your employees parking there. Do they have off-site parking for their employees?
No.
Do we require that of other physicians?
It all depends on the amount of parking that they provide on site.
I see. Okay. So, and just 30 patients in a day, I see that. I feel that that's really not an accurate number that they're going to be seeing. It would certainly be more than that. So I'm totally opposed to it.
Okay, I appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kevin, is Ms. Hoyt back?
She has not responded yet.
Okay.
So I will add the next person is Dawn Massa.
Hello.
Hello.
Make sure you let them know. Yes, this is Carrie Hoyt.
Oh.
Yeah, I was having trouble with my mic, so I ran across the street.
Okay.
Okay. So first, I'd like to say to the
Hoyt,
board.
can you give us your address again, please?
Yes, I live at 46 Perrydale Court.
Thank you.
Okay, and first, I'd like to say to the board, you did a good job with questions. You went over most of my concerns. But I'd like to share living on this block. I find the traffic study talking about how the bank had so much more almost laughable. It was a very low-key bank, as you know, with very little traffic. So I don't know how they can come up with that study saying this will create less traffic than the bank. In addition, people will not leave if they need to see a doctor. They will park on Perrydale Court like all the overflow always does. And they park along the fence where the houses are not, and they block our view of what's coming in and out of that lot, creating a problem for us. So that's a big concern. The without seeing the plans, I have questions about where medical waste is going to go, where dumpsters are going to go.
Okay.
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 I'm hoping that they go, if it's approved, more to the commercial side and not along Perrydale. And when there's talk of pavers going in where the drive-through, that's just going to be a big paved area, or is it going to be an area where people can congregate outside and wait to go inside if they're overloaded?
Okay. Just for the record, they can expound upon this. The dumpster looks like they're located on the northwest corner, not the corner, because the corner is actually landscaped, but it's approximately, looks like 20 feet off of Perrydale along the property line.
Yeah, and that's kind of real close to our residence areas
Yeah.
as far as rodents and stuff. So I don't know.
They'll what do you call it? They'll address that just to confirm if that's where it is. What shows on the site plan.
Okay, because I think if it was approved, it would make much more sense to put it on the other side.
Mhm.
And let me see what else I had. As far as giving numbers out now that are all pre-COVID, as much as this is a strange time we're all living through, what it showed us all is this can happen. This can happen at flu time. This can happen with anything. So once years from now or sooner, when COVID is gone, when flu season or any other thing comes up, we saw the lines on Sunrise Highway. We saw them on the news. There is nowhere for these people to go except down Perrydale Court should this happen again. And the thoughts of having airborne illnesses with people waiting outside on the paved area or waiting to see the doctor because they don't want to sit in an enclosed area, they're going to be right here. So I think that as much as it's a good thing to have a doctor there, it puts us in a funny situation here. It's exposing us to things maybe we shouldn't have to be exposed to. So yeah, I would really be interested in saying, like, what are your numbers today? Because today can be in the fall and today can be at the flu season, and also the time frame. What are they looking to do? Are they looking to start this construction immediately? And when it happens, where are their construction vehicles going to park? Because anytime there's work done, they all park on Perrydale and block our view.
Okay.
Okay, and yeah, and I'll just urge the board that with this being the first walk-up medical in the village, there's going to be a big precedent set here. And I hope that the consideration for the residents of Perrydale in this village are weighed more than that of a business coming into a location. And that's it.
I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Thank you for
Ms.
hearing
White.
me out. Thank you.
Right. And is Ms. Massa going to stay on that same line and give us comments, or were you together?
No, do you want to speak with them? No, she's good. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else, Kevin?
We do have let me see if he's here. Joseph Constantino. I'm going to add him now. Mr. Constantino dropped off. The next person is Lee Sheridan. Going to add her or him.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, can you hear me?
Yes.
Lee Sheridan, 25 Parallel Court, a single father of two, living diagonally from the proposed location of City MD. I have a series of objections to this proposed location for City MD, some of which have been touched on by Ms. Hoyt, but others I will elaborate upon. I'll start with the fact that this establishment proposes a inherent public health threat to our community. Indeed, an environment where a deadly pandemic is spread via airborne particles, the threat presented by a facility to the surrounding community should be readily apparent to the board and to anybody around, or certainly anybody within a neighborhood. I have a 12-year-old and a 6-year-old who actively roam around the neighborhood, of course, with my overview and surveillance. But with that said, the fact that this facility was even proposed for this area presented me as somewhat shocking. I mean, I've seen other urgent care facilities where they've had what would, I can't really characterize as anything other than triage tents where they would perform testing for an airborne virus, where my children and others readily shortcut through that area, is, to me, seems to be a non-starter for the community, for the village of Babylon. Not to mention, as Ms. Hoyt presented, issues potentially with medical waste and the like, is to me really truly shocking that anybody would ever consider putting this facility at that location in our community. You know, I really was, of all, I've been here since 2007, when Capital One presented to be, you know, placed there. It didn't present a problem to me, but certainly, whether it be current ongoing conditions in the world or the like, it really is startling to the point where I made sure I wanted to participate tonight. With that said, I mean, that is not my only concern. I mean, this facility, despite what they might say, presents a public nuisance to the neighborhood. Capital One, I mean, there's a reason why they say bank hours and why people almost smile when they hear banking hours, because they are really within the general 9 to 5 range. And how this facility is now going to present to all the citizens of this community that they will be of a less problematic traffic situation shocks me. I can't even imagine how they can present that. And moreover, and I did raise my hand during the hearing, they claim 30 to 40 patients per day. Does that include the triage tents where people drive up and seek to get tested for airborne viruses that my children might be subjected to? I have a 6 and a 12-year-old. I am literally, I'm looking at the building right now, out my window. I can't imagine that the village would even consider this, much less that we're at a hearing right now to even discuss this. Because there are many people who might say various things about this pandemic and, you know, whether masks help or this or that, and that's all political. I won't get into that. Let's just say it's something much worse than this. And don't get me wrong, This is horrible. Look at the impact to our country, our neighborhoods, our communities, and it's devastating. Let's just say that this is a much more viral spreading pandemic. And my kids are literally biking around, walking around, whatever it might be. It is completely unacceptable that this will even be considered for this location. Again, I mean, I cite, the banking hours. So I'll go back to whether this be a presentation of a problem for public health. I mean, clearly this is different and separate and apart from a bank. So that we can immediately distinguish this facility from any other that has proposed to be here. And I don't think you can get a commitment of City MD that they won't set up the tents or similar type temporary facilities to test for people and the like. Furthermore, I raised my hand earlier today, that 30 to 40 number of patients per day, does that include the ad hoc individuals which just drive up looking to get a test, which, as we all know, has been difficult to obtain during this horrid pandemic, which has made things so horrible for everybody, healthcare givers, first responders, parents, and teachers. This is absurd that we are even considering this facility. I'll move on to the next point, which would be whether it be a public nuisance. I mean, that seems to me to be manifest. Their hours will be at least 2 to 3 hours greater than any banking facility, which would be cited at the present location. I mean, 8 hours versus whatever it might be for a bank. And as we've all previously noted on this call, much less time for a banking transaction versus a physical examination transaction. I mean, that just seems readily apparent to me. And again, I see all of this going down day after day, whether it be now or at any given point in the history of that location.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I wish I could say I was done, but I am not.
Well, let me ask you this. You covered a lot of territory, and you covered some of the territory that we have already. If it is new information, fine. If not, what I'd like to do is move on, because there are other people. We have other applications this evening. We may have other people here. And I do want to give the applicant an opportunity to respond to some of the good points that you and Ms. Hoyt bring up.
I will, and I'm sorry. I'll move on to one point which may not have been covered by other people, and I just know this from a personal perspective. The services offered by City MD are already provided by existing medical care providers within the Babylon Village community and/or nearby surrounding areas. I mean, there is another urgent care facility literally right down the block. Okay. But besides that, I would cite my personal physician, who is located diagonally from the proposed site of City MD, Babylon Medical Practice. We're dealing, folks who are listening, with 2 generations of, extremely gifted medical providers who have been entrenched in our community for years, many years prior to when I arrived in 2007 and fell in love with this community. And not only that, they have expanded their ability to treat people. I'm just saying this from a personal perspective.
No, I understand. But Mr. Sheridan, let's stay on this topic. We're very familiar with the Hertz organization, believe me. We see them very regularly. So I'll please ask if there's anything else particular to this application that you want to speak of. Otherwise, I really would.
And look, Mr. Humanek, I agree. And look, and I'm sure other people may agree on many of the points, but nonetheless, it is not without noting for anybody who might be listening in. I mean, you can indeed recognize from the fact that this is a unique situation. Indeed, my last presentation to this board of appeals, was in person. So I'm doing so online right now. And while I I'm happy to listen to you and have you move me along. You are also a patient of City MD, so I don't know any previous experience you may have had with them, right? But I know my previous experiences with Babylon Medical Practice. And I think others who may be patients there might want to also hear this. So I'm just simply stating this to reiterate to the people of this community, and this is a large community, Mr. Humanek, and I would urge you not to consider me, just to quickly move along, because this is not a point that has been touched on. The redundancy of this organization, which is going to be on the corner of my block near my children, representing or presenting a danger to my children and those to my neighbors, that you not quickly urge me along and speed me along.
Mr. Sheridan, I'm not trying to speed you along. What I'm trying, you've made this point though 3 times, and we understand it, and we're going to take it into consideration. I just simply asked if there is another, is there a new point you're trying to make? This we're on old territory now. So that's all I'm saying. If you have something to add, I'd love to hear it. If not,
with that said, Mr.
typically we give people 3 minutes. It's been a lot longer than 3 minutes.
All right. With that said, Mr. Humanek, I don't think anybody's presented the redundancy that this practice or this.
I hear you, and it's on the record.
Okay, and thank you, Mr. Humanek. And I do note that you are a patient. I am not a patient of this facility, nor do I know anybody affiliated with this facility. You
Well,
do.
neither do I. I need an urgent care one day, and I just happen to wind up there. So I'm not a regular patient.
You wind up there. I've never wound up there, Mr. Humanek. You have.
Okay.
I don't know
Good.
whom you've
Good.
spoken.
Stay well.
And that's all I say. So okay. So it seems like you're rushing me along. That said, this will be followed up by several. And I should have noted.
Well,
I am at 25 Perrydale Court, and it is Lee T. Sheridan Esquire, and I am happy to, and I will follow up.
Okay.
With my representations of my objections to this facility being placed on the end of our block, presenting an inherent danger to our neighborhood. Thank you.
And I appreciate that. And as I said at the beginning of the meeting, if you'd like to give us any further comments, the docket's going to be left open for another 7 days. You can provide us anything else you would like in writing, and that'll certainly go into the record. It's not going to be lost.
It will be me and many in my community in the immediate area of this facility, which will absolutely be presenting you with representations of our objections to this facility being placed there.
That'll be fine. And we have the minutes on that we're taking right now. So I appreciate you coming.
Thank you very much, Mr. Humanek. I appreciate your time and the board's time.
Okay. Kevin, is there anyone else?
We do have a Mr. Daniel Fucillo. I'm going to add now.
Mr. Fucillo.
Still waiting for him to unmute.
There you go. Sorry about that. Good evening, everyone. And again, I'll reiterate what Ms. Hoyt said. We thank you for all your diligent questions on the topic. Dan Fucillo, I live on 35 Perrydale Court, just down a couple of houses down from the proposed site. I won't belabor that have been made. I will just say that this is a block that has gotten very young with young children. And we have a fair bit of traffic just for the natural cut through from Montauk to Perrydale Court. The traffic has been a bit less since the bank had closed. And certainly that is a big concern. I have a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old. And, I think we've all driven to the doctor extremely sick in our lives. And you can't say that there is not a bit of driver impairment when you've got a fever and you've got serious sick symptoms, and now you'll have people behind the wheel coming down the block with children riding on the sidewalk, and or the points about cars being parked in the block and people having to walk in that are either getting tested for COVID, the flu. There's plenty of other things that are very serious away from COVID. So this is more about the children on the block. We've been through a lot on this block, and it's no one's fault for the things that happened in the bank. We've dealt with 5 robberies and people getting chased down the block by police to the door, and now we're being asked to allow a facility that could have, airborne contagious infectious disease on the block. City MD is a chain. I don't see it any different than putting a McDonald's there, quite frankly. As the last caller said, we have plenty of medical facilities around us. I don't think there's an added benefit for the village and the people that live in the village. So I'll stop there. Thank you for your guidance tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Pichilla. Kevin, anyone else?
Just reviewing now. No, that is all the members of the public.
Okay, can we get the applicants back? Or the applicant back?
Yep.
Thank you.
Hello?
I think your computer went sideways, Dr. Shami. There you go. Thank you. Okay. A few questions have come up.
Okay.
Concerning certain issues. Who would like to address them?
Well, I
If
think
I could,
for medical waste, I'd like Dr. Shami to tell you how City MD deals with medical waste, and also with the, I guess, setting up tents or airborne contamination of the area from people going in and out of the facility.
yeah, I have quite a bit. So I just wanted to follow up on the last request. My colleagues just sent me a screenshot of our system. I'm happy to share it, but I'll just say what I'm looking at on my phone right now. So all of Long Island saw a total throughput time, as expected, less than our average significantly, was 27.1 minutes was the average time for a patient to be registered and discharged across the entirety of Long Island. Specific, that was 27.1. Specific to Eastern Nassau and Suffolk County, that number was 21.2. For Eastern Nassau and Suffolk County, 21.2 total registration to discharge. And for the entirety of Long Island, all of Nassau and all of Suffolk, it was 27.1. Those were the exact throughput times measured from our EMR, and that is being reported to me as we speak. So those are the times. I hope that addresses that question. 21.2 minutes for Eastern and Suffolk, and all of Long Island, 27.1. Okay. In terms of volume, I also got the exact volumes for some close sites. These are all sites that see roughly 40 patients and 40 averages. Roslyn, Riverhead, Copac, Hempstead, Catchog, Smithtown, and Bayshore. So those are they sent me that really quickly. I just wanted to get top of mind, what's the average volume at nearby sites? They sent me 7 or 8 sites as an example. And again, these are obviously pre-COVID numbers. I want to preface that. So those are I think those really address a lot of the throughput questions that were rightfully asked, better than I had seen. I haven't looked at that data recently in the past week or two, but that's good news, and the volume is good news. In terms of the disease, I guess it is a frightening disease, and I agree with that. And I put on my scrubs and my gear and my masks, and I treated patients 2 months ago, something I hadn't done, to be honest, in quite some time. Have shifted into administration, running this company. But I have children too. I have a 2-year-old and twin 7-year-olds. And I completely understand that gentleman's sentiment and his concern. I think everyone's concern primarily is their family first. But I am a little taken back. I think our service as a healthcare provider is exactly that. We're a servant to the community, not dissimilar to the fire department or the police department. And I hope we're viewed by that. And I believe we are viewed by that by the vast majority of the patients who need us. when they have a medical ailment. I think largely the medical community serves that function and does it with pride and dignity. And I hope the board would agree with that, generally speaking. COVID as an outdoor airborne, I'm not going to really get into that specifically. I think there's a lot of unknown research about the disease. Certainly, we also know that outside is the safest place to be. I would make an analogy to some of my colleagues. It's kind of like spitting in the ocean when you're outside, but nonetheless, it is a concerning virus. But the outside environment is continually where we want to be. But my primary point, I just wanted to leave the board with the notion or wanted to share that I really do hope the board agrees that medical services are exactly that. We're a servant to the community, and I believe that the doctor's offices and healthcare services, like every other public service, adds tremendous value to the folks we serve. But nonetheless, those were the wait times, and those were the throughput times, and those were the total visits that was requested. If there was a question about medical waste, I'll try to address that. Generally speaking, medical waste is so we have a dumpster on site for regular garbage. Medical waste is contained inside the store, and it's picked up by a company that comes, whatever it is, once a week, once a month. I forget the exact date they come, but they come and pick up the waste from inside the facility in a locked bin. We don't throw medical waste outside. I think that's also against several codes, but medical waste is dealt with inside the facility. I'll leave it at that.
And lastly, I remember the comment about the paved area, the use of the paved area, I guess, which is the area that was the drive-through.
We can have, well, basically, we have just converted that area into a area. We have actually show a couple tables there for the staff to take a break with, or a patient's family could wait outside while the patient's in there. But it's a nice paved area with new landscaping to make it more attractive rather than having a drive-through, keeping the drive-through paving there. So
I also wanted to add to that. You just remind me about the tents. We've never deployed a tent in anywhere in Long Island. We've never, City MD has never installed a tent in Long Island. So that certainly wasn't our facility. I stand by that statement. I asked our VP of medical operations, do we do tents? Absolutely not. We do not have tents, was his response. And I also confirmed again that we do not do texting at this time. And so that was also confirmed. I just wanted to follow up on that.
Okay. I think that covers us and the questions that were raised. So I thank you for your presentation this evening. We will reserve decision over based on the comments tonight, on your responses and what you've given us today as well, traffic study, etc. If there are any other issues that come up, we will certainly contact you and seek out answers to whatever other questions we may come up with. Other than
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to share my condolences. I wanted to open up with that, but we jumped right in for your colleague. I'm very sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, would you like in writing the testimony that Dr. Shami just gave regarding the wait times, the through times and things like that?
That would be helpful. That would be helpful because he also had specifics that I think Mr. O'Farrell asked for. That would be very helpful.
Okay, we will put that in a writing for you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay. Good evening.
Thank you very much. And again, and I forgot also, my condolences also. It's always hard to lose a long-term board member.
Thank you.
Good night.
Kevin?
I do not believe we have our second applicant, John O'Sullivan here. I'm just
not on.
checking now.
Okay.
I do not see John Sullivan here. If you'd like me to proceed to the third application.
Yes, please.
We do have Mr. Ruggieri here. Shall I let him in now?
Yes, and we'll read the application, Jeff, please.
Okay. Application number 3, application of Robert Ruggieri, 103 Cooper Street LLC, 103 Cooper Street, Babylon, New York, for permission to maintain business offices at the premises located at 103 Cooper Street, Babylon, New York. Property located in Residence O District, Suffolk County Real Property Tax Map District 0102, Section 11, Block 1, Lot 6. Application made in accordance with Sections 365-17 and 365-35.
Hi, everyone. It's Robert Ruggieri. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Ruggieri. You sound like you're on the road.
I am. Yeah, so I'm the owner of 103 Cooper Street. I am also the owner of the company that resides as a business at 103 Cooper Street. This is our third time through the process of the resident zone O approval. We are, besides owning the real estate, the company that is the tenant within the building, In Process Inc. is a financial and data processing and payroll processing company. We occupy the entire building at this point and house approximately 18 employees. Many of those employees now and even pre-COVID were doing working remotely or split shifts. And as far as I know, we have no complaints and good relationships with neighbors, as we did in the prior two appearances before the board. No changes to the structure of the building, to the tenants, to the type of building. We are a 9 to 5 operator. There's no parking on the street. We have ample parking in our lot to house the employees that are in the building. And again, to my knowledge, always great relations with the neighborhood.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Ruggieri. We have no complaints on file, and so that's good. At the last time we approved this back in July of 18, it was contingent on a number of conditions. There were like 11 conditions in the letter, and I'll just ask you generally, or not generally, but specifically, are you still in conformance with all those conditions?
We are.
Okay. Now, one of those conditions, now I look at it, you had a total number of staff occupying the premise was not going to exceed 14. You're saying now there's 18?
Yes, but not occupying the building at one time. We have individuals that telecommute, that work remotely. And then, again, pre-COVID, we were doing split shifts as well.
Okay, so that's
so that also
case.
that 14 also was because we had 2 tenants at the time.
Okay.
There's no tenants remaining in the building, and it's just our company occupying the entire premises.
Okay, and also the third condition was it was going to be Monday to Friday, 8 to 6, and with nothing on weekends. Is that still the same?
That is, yeah. We're Monday to Friday, 9 to 5.
Okay, do you want me to leave it 8 to 6, or do you want 9 to 5?
I prefer 8 to 6.
Okay, we'll leave it the way it is. The only comment I have when I was at the property, looking at the property, is I think it could use some maintenance on the building. You have those structures that kind of cover the windows, almost like eyelids, the white structures.
Yeah.
That
correct. We actually, yeah. I'm sorry to cut you off, but we actually just put a deposit down last week on redoing those structures.
Okay.
Painting the building, painting the roof shingles, and power washing the bricks. So, yeah, I'm there every day, and it's bothered me all winter long. So we just put a 50% deposit down on the work that's scheduled to start next week.
Great. Okay, great. That's all, that's really all I had. Anybody, any member of the board, Jeff, any questions?
No, I don't have any.
Okay, Frank?
No, that was the only issue. I have nothing else.
Okay, John?
I'm good.
Okay, great. Okay, Mr. Ruggieri, you will hear from us shortly.
Thanks very much, gentlemen. Have a great night.
Thanks, you too. Kevin, is there anyone here, anyone who wants to make a comment on this application?
No, I have no one.
Okay. So let's move on to the next one.
Okay, application number 4. The application of Kathleen Palapoli, 26 Wilson Drive, Babylon, New York, for permission to construct an addition to the existing garage on the premises located at 26 Wilson Drive, Babylon, New York, requiring variances to reduce the rear yard setback from 5 feet required to 2.9 feet proposed, and to increase the height limits from 15 feet permitted to 19 feet proposed. Property located in Residence A9 District, Suffolk County Real Property Tax Map, District 0102, Section 15, Block 1, Lot 47. Application made in accordance with Section 365-14.
I have added Ms. Palapoli.
Okay. Ms. Calapoli?
Yes,
Okay, can you just explain to us what you're looking to do?
we are looking to add a cupola on top of our garage.
Okay, and that's it, right?
That's it.
Okay, because we saw, you just gave us the pictures of it. The garage work is all completed, right?
Yes,
And so it's only about the cupola.
yes,
And it's as shown in one of your renderings, correct?
correct.
Okay. And you are, I know I saw a picture of it in the garage, so I guess you're ready to go.
Well, it's not on the garage. It's in the garage now.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. I
Oh,
saw
yeah,
a picture
yeah.
of it sitting in the garage.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I don't have any issues. Anybody else have any questions on this one?
No, I have none.
Okay. Hearing none, and then you'll hear from us very soon, Miss Kalapli.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
Okay.
Okay, application number 5. Application of Don Middleton Jr., BOMTICC Realty LLC, 54 George Street, Babylon, New York, for permission to construct dwellings on the premises located at 75 Fire Island Avenue, Babylon, New York, requiring variances to reduce the front yard setback from 30 feet required to 12.1 foot proposed, to reduce the minimum side yard setback from 30 feet required to 26.27 foot proposed, and to reduce the total side yard setback from 60 feet required to 52.64 feet proposed. Lot density allows 3 units. Applicant seeks 6 units. Property located in Residence N District, Suffolk County Real Property Tax Map, District 0102, Section 14, Block 2, Lot 64.1. Application made in accordance with Section 365-18 and 365-35.
Okay, Mr. Middleton.
Yes, sir. Good evening, gentlemen. How are you? First of all, I'd like to say thank you to the board for considering our application this evening, and I'll try to be very brief. As stated, we are here to discuss the variance requirements for our proposed building at 75 Fire Island Avenue. As you may be aware, we have had 3 different meetings with the planning board in 2018 and in 2019, and with the village board in 2020, and have come forward with our present plan. Our original plan for this property called for the construction of a much larger 8,200 square foot 2-story building to accommodate 5 2-bedroom apartment units. After very, very careful consideration and replanning, we have come forward with what we think is a much more substantial plan for the construction of a 4,500 square foot two-story building, which would accommodate 6 one-bedroom units. We are seeking variances for relief, front yard setback, minimum and total side yard requirements as illustrated by Mr. Weber. Lot density also allows for 3 units, and we are seeking 6. We have met with the neighboring property owners, and there does not appear to be any major objections with regards to our proposal. Mr. Martens and Mr. Vitale, that own the property to the southeast of us, have asked for the planting of some mature arborvitaes along the lot line to prevent the pathway of any potential lights from entering into any of the bedrooms along their property. They have also asked for a reduction of the northerly buffer area so that we could possibly expand the southerly buffer area between us and the residences, as there is only the municipal parking lot to the north of our property, which is for you to consider. The young family to the east of the site would also like some nice mature trees to be planted there as well, to create a nice buffer between their backyard and their property. And Mr. Sands to the south of us has requested that we plant some bollards directly behind his garage, as his garage is very close to the property line, so there wouldn't be any damage. We are amenable to these, absolutely. We are also likely going to be commissioning RAB lighting to do the photometrics on this, which will limit any off-site lighting concerns with regards to the property. We believe that this planned construction project is consistent with the character of the neighborhood, with this portion of the neighborhood, and we believe it to be a very good transitional project between to the commercial to the north of us and the residential to the south. The current design does its very best to minimize our variance requirements and is the safest plan with regards to egress, ingress, and is the best plan regarding parking. All right.
Okay.
Are there any questions?
Sure. Could you just take us through the thinking for the offset of the building? Was that to maximize parking in the rear and access?
Yes. Yeah, that was primarily a product of our discussions with the village board members. They are very much in favor of building in the front and parking in the back. If you can eliminate the parking view and the parked cars from the street is one of the objectives and why we have the building placed in the spot where it is. The original, when we sat down with the planning board at first, we were having a much larger building along the southerly lot line, and the parking lot would be fully exposed along the carriage house's southerly border. And then after going through and seeing some designs, different apartment designs in a couple of different areas on Long Island, we saw this one in a place in Amityville. The design was good, and it was a smart spot where you'd be able to put a building with a sufficient amount of units and the parking directly behind it. So it's really a function of that.
Was it the same design building in Amityville?
It was actually, the building in Amityville was an 8-unit.
Okay.
And it was a little bit wider, but it did have it had 4 in they were up and down, townhouse style. They had 4 in the front that were roughly 17 wide by 25 deep. And then they had another one behind it. So you had four entrances in the front and then 4 entrances to the back. And all of the units were townhouse style. We like the townhouse style in particular because it gives you you don't have anybody necessarily living on top of you.
Right.
Banging from above. I think the townhouse is something that's it's a much beneficial kind of construction. It's one of the things that draws some of the people to units that are like that.
Right. The only thing that surprised me, and that's why I was interested if it was copied from another site someplace close, was the metal roof.
Yes,
That's a different design than you normally see here. I see
That-
the state, but that's very different for here.
yeah, it's actually the idea of a black metal roof is a lot of that. You do see that a lot in the country. You do see a lot of that in upstate New York, and I could thank my wife for coming up with the design idea. That was my wife's idea. And looking at this, she said it may be something very nice and attractive to put a nice metal roof on top of Victorian style looking building. That'll look very nice and basically look good against some of the other buildings that are in the neighborhood, some of the other Victorian style. So I have to thank my wife for that.
Okay, I just thought it just caught me as being different
Yeah,
from
it's a
what
neat
you
idea.
normally see. I didn't know if you had copied it from someplace else, just to get a sense to what it.
The one we had seen in Amityville was
area.
mansard.
I'm
Had a
sorry?
mansard. It had a mansard. The one we
Right.
had noticed in Amityville had a mansard roof, and that was a little bit different. And I don't think that the necessarily it was a little shallower. I don't think it would have done it the exact kind of justice as this one and this design does.
Okay. And you did a short form EAF, right?
Yes,
For the trustees when they consider the zoning change,
correct.
right? And you received the letter from them relatively recently on that zoning change.
Yes, we did.
Okay. Okay. I don't have any other questions right now. Gentlemen? Questions?
How
I don't
many
have any,
parking
Bruce.
spaces did we say were there? Number of parking spaces?
We have 14 on the property. The requirement is 14, so we make the parking requirement.
And that's based on the 2.25, right?
That is correct.
Per dwelling.
Yep.
Lot coverage is like a little less than 14%.
Yep.
25 is allowed by code. You're staying within the 30-foot height limit.
Is that 30 feet is that a flood zone over there or?
I don't believe so.
Okay,
don't think
'cause
so.
I just wanted to know if it was
So-
going to be actually 30 feet or 30 feet above base flood.
Right.
Plus two.
No, I'm not. I don't believe so.
All right, is that something you can check for us? Because
Sure.
we have to wait, this is gonna be open for 7 days to get comments anyhow. So.
Right,
if you can
okay,
verify that would be good.
sure.
Anything else, Jeff? You have any questions?
No from me.
Okay, Frank, and then we got John. Okay. Middleton, let's see if there's anyone in the room, in the waiting room that's gonna make comments on this.
Okay,
No, we had one person signed to speak, but they have not shown up.
Okay,
So nobody.
all righty. So given that, then Mr. Middleton, you're gonna get back to us on that one issue, and then we will take this under consideration and we'll let you know.
thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care now. Okay, Kevin, do we have anybody else in our waiting area?
Not that I'm
No.
seeing.
Nope, nobody that hasn't spoken already.
Okay, righty. But we still have others? I keep seeing things popping up on my screen. I'm not sure who's.
No, there's 4 previous speakers still here, but they already spoke. Nobody knew.
Okay,
We had one no-show, is that what we had here tonight? The,
I'm sorry?
one no-show on Waterman?
Mr. Sullivan, yes.
Yeah, Mr. Sullivan, we'll have to follow up with him. Just follow up with the Sullivans.
Yes.
Of the applications we just heard, Okay, they're all gonna stay open for 7 days anyhow for comment. So we're gonna reserve decision on all of those that we heard this evening. And then we will see what we get when we get back in September, since we don't meet next month. Let's take a quick look at the prior meetings, the old business. So Christina, help us move along here. The application in May of Ms. Vanzetta on Bay.
It was a mistype, the date.
Okay. Oh, that was supposed to be June?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Okay, gotcha.
Why are we still?
Okay. So we haven't received anything else. This was to maintain the mother-daughter use. So
Right.
we got no other comments on that one. I'll entertain a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we grant permission to maintain the mother-daughter at 97 Bayview Avenue, subject to the same CNRs that they had before with a 3-year period.
Okay, have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Okay, second one. Application of Consuelo Hertz. George S. Limited, permission to maintain a medical office, 350 West Main Street. We did hear this. We deferred decision because we wanted additional information regarding parking from the applicant. And that was the issue. We got a letter back. Applicant's supposed to have amended CNRs. Christina, I had one question. Maybe you know the answer, or else we have to go back to the applicant with this one. We got a copy of an agreement, right, between the applicant and, let me just go back. Where is it? Here we go. Between the applicant and the Masonic Hall, right?
Right.
And we received that 2 days ago. The problem I'm having, unless you have something different, is that the agreement that he gave us was for use of parking spaces there for a certain amount, but that the lease started on April 15th, 2016, ended on April 15th, 2017. And it says it may be renewed each year by either party, but I have no indication that it was. All I have is that it went to 17.
Right. Yeah,
Right now-
the
Go ahead.
attorney, the attorney indicated that it was kind of a rolling lease. If you want me to
That's
get
what
more.
it says. Yeah, well, that could be. It sounds like it, but there's nothing in here that indicates it's currently in place.
Okay.
I don't understand the term rolling lease. I've done a fair amount of leasing work, and usually if it was an automatic renewal, it would say it in the body of the document. Otherwise, there would have to be a subsequent writing to confirm that it's still in place. If it's not in place, if they don't have a 1-year term, then it's a month to month, and they could cancel it on 30 days notice. So it doesn't give me a lot of comfort if it's, a month to month agreement at that point.
Right. So, yeah, if you can, get back to them, and this doesn't meet what we really need. So we're going to have to hold off on him for another meeting.
Okay.
Okay. Dr. Hubert, this is also for another, to maintain his chiropractic office. We heard him. We left the comment period open. We had no additional comments from the public. I'll entertain a motion on that one.
Bruce, I'll move to approve the application of Dr. Hubert, Fire Island Avenue, to maintain his chiropractic practice for a period of 3 years.
Okay. with the same covenants and restrictions
Right.
we have in the last one? Okay. I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, that's approved. Next one, application of Patrick Regan. This is for the maintain the business at 463 Deer Park Avenue. Same issue here. We had no comments at the meeting, and no comments were provided subsequent. So I'll entertain a motion on this one.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we grant permission to maintain business use in the residential district for 463 Deer Park Avenue, subject to the same CNRs and a 3-year term as before.
Okay, can I have a second?
Excuse me.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Unanimous. Okay, next was application of Donald Middleton. This is for permission to maintain the office space on the lower level of his facility at 54 George Street. Same thing, we had no comments given by the public during the hearing or subsequent to the hearing. I'll entertain a motion on this one.
I'll make a motion to approve the application.
Okay, for 3 years?
3 years, yes, sorry.
Same CNRs or whatever we need. Okay, we did on the last one. All right, second?
Yep, second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Fine. Unanimous. Next one is application of BKH Architect Brandon Hemchuk for agent for owners, the Heenans on 18 Harrison Avenue. We had, there were two issues with this one. One, we wanted to make sure that the applicant had the correct elevation. It was difficult to believe that he wasn't in the flood zone immediately across the street on East Harrison. The building inspector confirmed that he's okay by a half a foot.
Wow.
God bless him. At the same time, we requested confirmation on the sound attenuation for the AC units that were 2.5 feet from the property line. The applicant came back to us and he told us that the nearest house is about 15 feet from the fence. It's further from his place. The building inspector has a guideline that the sound rating should not exceed 60 decibels at the fence line. The applicant has submitted, or his agent in this case, has submitted information for 2 different types of equipment, AC equipment, one of which is, I think, 75 decibels, and the other one's in the 50s range. So my suggestion is if we're going to move forward with this, we would just require that none of the AC units exceed 60 decibels at the fence line, which is doable, certainly, based on what he provided. Any other issues on this one? I think those were the 2 we had.
No.
Okay, entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the application with the condition that the AC units not exceed 60 decibels at the property line.
Okay, I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Unanimous. Okay, and then we had application of Danica Meehan, 110 Beverly Road. This was for the front yard addition that they rebuilt. Same thing, we had no comments from the public at the hearing or subsequent. Any issues on this one? I'll make a motion on this to approve based on the application that we received and testimony given.
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Unanimous. The Lockwood application is, I'm finalizing that. Patel, oh, that's the one. Patel, 258, 262. And
Yeah, what's going on with that?
Okay. Last time we heard this, we asked whether or not, we asked Havoc and Murray to revisit the secra on this application based on the changes that were proposed. Basically, the 7-foot setback on the rear as opposed to the 2.5 feet he originally proposed. We got a revised set of variance requirements from Steve. New set of elevations. We submitted the plans. It was all reviewed by Savick and telling it we got a response late last month indicating that there was no need for further seeker review. So based on this, do we still have any issues? This is the old Sherwin-Williams property. Do we still have any issues with this particular application? We can move it forward.
Yeah, I think he addressed the two main concerns we had, which was the proximity to the southerly property line and the drainage issue. So
Yes.
at this point, I don't see any reason to hold it up.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I also understand that, since he got the Department of Transportation approval on the drainage area into the street itself, that time clock is ticking in the approval he received. So I think he's going to move on this relatively quickly or else the clock starts again.
Right.
So, okay, so you want to make a motion?
Whole thing was here.
Yeah, I'm making a motion that we grant permission for this application to construct a 2-story building with 1 tenant on the first floor and 4-story apartments.
Okay. We'll redo
Subject to,
the application itself based on the new plan submitted.
yes,
Okay.
That-
Do.
enough detail, or do we need to?
I think we have the gist of that. We can draft up a appropriate response. We can get David to draft that up. I don't think we have to have a statement of findings. I think we know what we want. So.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Can I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Jeff, you on board? Jeff?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. You voting yes?
I voted yes.
Oh, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry. Okay. Let's see. Lifeline restoration. Still haven't heard anything. No additional information on Bonsignore. Terry Associates, this is 141 John Street.
Yeah, what's going on with that guy? Because he's like operating full bore out of that property and he still owes us stuff.
He does. We don't know. Let's see. 520, we deferred decision. Planning board application decision letter need to be corrected. So we haven't seen that yet. I don't think we've seen that yet. Have we, Christina?
No.
We haven't seen that. The postal service determines the address and it's listed as 149. Now, although his deal was for 141, makes no sense. He was supposed to straighten this out. And that was supposed to be corrected. We have not seen that yet. The other issue was the building inspector to look at it. And the issue was to see, let's see, building inspector reviewed current use, stated believe it to be similar to the uses permitted within the industrial zone. But the question was, he was supposed to redo his plans because half the things he wanted to do when he came before us, he decided not to, right before the meeting. Right. We do not have an updated set of plans. So Christina, could you follow up with the applicant on that as well?
Yes.
Because right now he's operating in violation. You may want to talk to Steve as well. Because Steve has to make sure that if he's violating, the use of that property, that's got to stop. We have to get his attention to address what he came to us for, unless he doesn't need us anymore because it's permitted under the current code. And since I don't know exactly what he's going to do, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Okay. And, oh, last, well, not, yeah, now last. 98 Frederick. This was the request we had for the circular driveway.
Right.
We made a statement of findings last meeting. We asked David to develop it. He has done so. I reviewed it. I think everybody got a copy of it. And I think we're ready for moving it forward. Any questions on it? This was a denial on that on the driveway.
Driveway, denied it. Oh,
You know, this was the undersized lot.
Yeah, it had insufficient lot width, right, for the circular drive?
I'm sorry?
It had insufficient lot width for the circular drive, if I
Yeah, it was
remember.
like a 30%. You needed 100, he only had 70.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll entertain a motion on this one.
Also, I'll move, Mr. Chairman, to accept the statement of findings and formally deny the request.
Okay, have a second?
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. Christina, I think that's the end of our, since we're going to hold over the two larger applications this evening. Well, we have to hold over all of them, actually, but we have some homework to do on these. I think that covers all of our old business. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So having nothing further, then I will ask for a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Okay. I'll second. And anybody else who's listening, I would just say good evening and have a good summer and stay safe.